Hey guys, I got a haircut. It's Fragment Friday, and I wanted to do something a little bit different because I'm a rebel that way. I don't know. What I did want to do was because I get an awful lot of people asking for suggestions for books to read and things like that, and I find myself suggesting the same books over and over again. And so I thought I would read a page from each of a few books that I often recommend. So the first one is called Special Topics in Calamity Physics, which is by Marisha Pessl. And this was a big book a while back and hit the New York Times bestseller list and was one of the New York Times top 100 most notable books of the year for some year. I'm not sure what year it was. But I really was really drawn to this book by the voice and the writing style, which is very kind of fluid and full of run-on sentences and asides and similes and things like that. And I think you'll see what I mean when I read the first page. It's a mystery set at a boarding school, and it's I find it really intriguing. It's also set up in a style that references a lot of literary classics. So here's the first page of the introduction. Dad always said a person must have a magnificent reason for writing out his or her life story and expecting anyone to read it. Unless your name is something along the lines of Matisse, Mozart, Churchill, Che Guevara, or Bond, James Bond, you best spend your free time finger painting or playing shuffleboard, for no one, with the exception of your flabby-armed mother, with stiff hair and a mashed potato way of looking at you, will want to hear the particulars of your pitiable existence, which doubtlessly will end as it began, with a wheeze. Given such rigid parameters, I always assumed I wouldn't have my magnificent reason until I was at least 70, with liver spots, rheumatism, wit as quick as a carving knife, a squat stucco house in Avignon where I could be found eating 365 different cheeses, a lover 20 years my junior who worked in the fields, I don't know what kind of fields, any kind that were gold and frothy, and with any luck a small triumph of science or philosophy to my name. And yet the decision, no, the grave necessity, to take pen to paper and write about my childhood, most critically, the year it unstitched like a snagged sweater, came much sooner than I ever imagined. It began with simple sleeplessness. It had been almost a year since I'd found Hannah dead, and I thought I'd managed to erase all traces of that night within myself, much in the way Henry Higgins, with his relentless elocution exercises, had scrubbed away Eliza's Cockney accent. I was wrong. So, Special Topics in Calamity Physics. Love that book. So that's a mystery, and the next one is also a mystery. It's Alexander McCall Smith's The #1 Ladies Detective Agency, which you've probably heard of because it's a really popular series. And frankly, it's the only series, adult, YA, or otherwise, that I ever make it a point to read every single book in the series. And here's the first thing, and I'll probably stumble over this like crazy. Chapter 1, The Daddy. Marumatsue had a detective agency in Africa at the foot of Kigali Hill. These were its assets. Take 2. Marumatsue had a detective agency in Africa at the foot of Kigali Hill. These were its assets. A tiny white van, 2 desks, 2 chairs, a telephone, and an old typewriter. Then there was a teapot in which Marumatsue, the only lady private detective in Botswana, brewed red bush tea. And 3 mugs, one for herself, one for her secretary, and one for the client. What else does a detective agency really need? Detective agencies rely on human intuition and intelligence, both of which Marumatsue had in abundance. No inventory would ever include those, of course. But there was also the view, which again could appear on no inventory. How could any such list describe what one saw when one looked out from Marumatsue's door? To the front, an acacia tree, the thorn tree which dots the wide edges of the Kalahari, the great white thorns a warning, the olive gray leaves by contrast so delicate. In its branches, in the late afternoon, or in the cool of the early morning, one might see a go-away bird, or hear it rather, and beyond the acacia, over the dusty road, the roofs of the town under a cover of trees and scrub bush on the horizon. in a blue shimmer of heat, the hills like improbable overgrown termite mounds. I really like the way he describes stuff. And in fact, the book is probably just as much a sort of a travelogue of Botswana as it is a mystery. It's a lot of social commentary, and it has a feel of like telling lots of stories at once, almost like a soap opera, which I love. The last book I'm going to read from is Naked by David Sedaris, and this is actually a collection of essays and things like that. And he's a very funny guy, which I think you'll get from this first page. Actually, the paragraph is a single paragraph that starts and goes all the way to the next page, which normally I don't like, but he's hilarious. The first story in this one is called Chipped Beef. I'm thinking of asking the servants to wax my change before placing it in the Chinese tank I keep on my dresser. It's important to have clean money, not new, but well maintained. That's one of the tenets of my church. It's not mine personally, but the one I attend with my family, the Cathedral of the Sparkling Nature. It's that immense Gothic building with the towers and bells and statues of common people poised to leap from the spires. They offer tours, and there's an open house the first Sunday of every October. You should come. Just don't bring your camera, because the flash tends to spook the horses, which is a terrible threat to me and my parents, seeing as the Reverend insists that we occupy the first pew. He rang us up not long ago, tipsy, he's a tippler, saying that our faces brought him closer to God, and it's true. We're terribly good-looking people. They're using my mother's profile for the new monorail token. And as for my father and me, the people at NASA want to design a lunar module based on the shape of our skulls. Our cheekbones are aeronautic, and the clefts of our chin can hold up to 3 dozen BBs at a time. When asked, most people say that my greatest asset is my skin, which glows. It really does. I have to tie a sock over my eyes in order to fall asleep at night. Others like my eyes or my perfect gleaming teeth, my thick head of hair or my imposing stature. But if you want my opinion, I think my most outstanding feature is my ability to accept a compliment. So obviously he's a little eccentric, and his writing style is very conversational and very irreverent and sort of crazy sounding, but this is like one of the most hilarious books I've ever read, and you should definitely, if you've not read David Sedaris, you should give it a shot. So that's the 3 of them. Naked by David Sedaris, The #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith, and Special Topics in Calamity Physics by Marisha Pessl. And the reason that I'm not really doing any YA this week is because I think if you're a writer, and I know a lot of people who are on YouTube and a lot of the book bloggers are also aspiring writers, it's important to read widely. Read outside of your genre to get an idea of what good writing is. And that's not to say that there's not good writing in YA. There's tons of good writing in YA. And possibly some of the best editing of books is in YA currently. But to get a broad view of the way people write in sort of in a literary way, or how they write for mysteries, or how they put together what's considered a very distinctive voice, you should definitely get out there and read a variety. And start doing it now. That's all for my Fragment Friday. I'll see you next time. And next time I'm going to have a bookshelf invasion with Gwen Hayes. So you're definitely going to want to check that out.